Welcome to the Slut Next Door podcast, where we dive deep into desire, unravel kinks and fetishes, and explore the deliciously naughty side of self-discovery. I'm Beatrix Vale, an erotic audio creator, and your guide to all things kinky and curious. So let's begin. Welcome back to my podcast. Today I want to talk about something that so many of my listeners crave, and a kink that I often feel so strongly about, one that I personally enjoy giving to men, and that is sexual humiliation. And sometimes I feel very passionate about it because I feel like it's often misunderstood and sometimes even misrepresented by other doms. But sexual humiliation, I think the phrase makes some people immediately tense up, and that's okay. I'm here to say that it's not wrong. It's actually pretty human. And I think it's beautiful in its vulnerability. So I want this episode to obviously be a safe space, especially for the men listening, to understand that wanting humiliation doesn't make you broken, weak, or less than. I think it means that you're ready to be seen. Now, before we jump into the topic, I'm going to do my new little segment where I explain how I'm currently feeling like a goddess or what's making me feel like a goddess. Now, the first thing, I don't know if some of you will even understand, but what's making me feel like a goddess are crystals. I am obsessed. I've been obsessed for a couple years now, but I think I'm in like a second wave of obsession. They just make me so happy. I use them in my own meditation. I use them to kind of decorate my house. I just surround myself with them, and they make me so happy. And they make me feel like a goddess because I am, surrounding myself with these things that are so precious and from the earth, and they just elevate me and make me feel like a goddess. The second thing that's making me feel like a goddess today is something so simple but so deep and so meaningful to me, and it's love and worship. Little things like receiving a message that says, I just love losing myself in your voice, or wow, that was such a great file. Just little comments that I receive that make me feel like a goddess, because I work really hard on my craft and my creation. And when I receive that love and that praise, it just makes me feel like an absolute goddess. So there you go. The things that are making me feel like the goddess that I am today. And with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the topic of sexual humiliation. First, I'm going to answer, what is sexual humiliation really about? I think that some people often imagine that humiliation is cruelty or punishment. It's the sake of a woman or a man being a bitch for no reason, but that's not what we're talking about here. Because in real erotic power exchange, humiliation is about exposure and honesty and surrender. It's about being seen so deeply that you no longer have to hide the parts of yourself that the world told you were unacceptable. And for many men, erotic humiliation isn't about being hurt for them. It's actually about being freed, a sense of freedom, freed from the pressure to perform, free from the pressure to be perfect, or even free from the feeling of always needing to be the one in control. And there are so many ways that men can experience humiliation erotically, and none of them are wrong. So, some of the examples are that some men crave verbal humiliation. It might be name calling, words that outside of that sexual scene might sound super cruel, but inside that magical container of kink, they become something electric. So, words like calling you pathetic, like a pathetic little toy, or my useless little plaything. Like those words become a language, like a way to pierce through the ego and speak directly to the part of them that just wants to surrender. And so if someone was walking down the street, this man that's into being called pathetic or useless, if he's walking down the street and some random person says, hey, you're pathetic and you're useless, I don't think they're going to be turned on by that. It's really in a space where they give consent to hearing that. They want to hear it in that moment. So yeah, and then there's physical or kind of situational humiliation. So things like being made to kneel, being instructed to beg, being denied an orgasm, needing permission to orgasm. These are just examples of these. And so some men are told to perform these acts that really flip the script on what masculinity is supposed to look like. So things that make them serve or clean, or they're just simply being exposed. And that vulnerability then becomes arousal because it's finally safe to stop pretending strength is the only way to be desirable. Because we know that, men are kind of formed and expected to be the strong one, to be the one that never needs anything. And so, sexual humiliation allows them to be the opposite of that. Other men might want to experience sexual humiliation through fantasies that are like tied to performance. So things like small penis humiliation, premature ejaculation, or even cuckold play. And, for some, the thought of being compared to other men or being reminded of their quote unquote failures brings a rush of shame that then turns into heat. And it's very interesting because it's not about self-hatred. It's more about the thrill of surrendering control over their image, over their pride, and over their ego. And so in that moment, they can be imperfect. They can be inadequate and still be desired. And some men really crave cuckold or like comparison kind of dynamics because it lets them confront the fear of not being enough. And then that fear turns into arousal. In the same way, Men who respond to small penis humiliation often will describe it as a release. So like their secret anxiety about their size becomes something that no longer controls them because they've eroticized it. And they've given power to something that, society might say, oh, well, you're not big enough. And, that becomes like this spiral of shame where in sexual humiliation, it's empowered. And even premature ejaculation conditioning can be a form of surrender because there's losing control, giving that power away, and being told that the loss itself is beautiful. So then there's psychological humiliation, where the dom teases the mind more than the body. So, being told to confess something that he's never said out loud, admit how badly he wants to be owned or denied or made to feel small. And it's really not about cruelty at all. It's about vulnerability and letting go of everything that hides the truth. And then there's, a personal favorite of mine. I think that a lot of my fans would say that I really knocked this out of the park is affectionate humiliation. So where the sting and the softness live side by side. So the man is being teased, mocked, or even embarrassed, but also praised, adored, and comforted. And that blend is extremely powerful because I think it reminds him that even in the most exposed state, he's still safe. And I always like to say that I don't have to yell to deliver humiliation or degradation. I would argue that sometimes it hits even harder coming from a voice that is soft and, in control. It's way more than yelling, for sure. But humiliation, when it's erotic and consensual, those two things are important. Erotic and consensual is not at all like destruction. It becomes this revelation and a moment where I think a man can learn that his shame doesn't make him unworthy, it makes him real. And it's how he finds freedom inside the thing that he used to hide from or used to hate about himself. So when I humiliate someone, I am definitely not saying that you're less than, even though my words may feel like that. I'm really saying underneath it all that you don't have to pretend anymore. And I think that that's where real surrender begins. Now, let's talk about the ego for a moment. So there's a part of your brain that wants to protect you. We like the ego. It's very helpful. It builds stories about who you are, who you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to act. It's the driver. It's the driver in the car seat a lot of the times. But in the world of power exchange, those walls can crumble. And for some men that are into humiliation, that wall crumbling, that collapse feels so fucking good. Humiliation does trigger shame. It does. I mean, a lot of fans of humiliation are seeking that feeling of shame, but in that erotic and consensual space, that shame becomes transformed. Because the shame says that, I am bad or I am less than, whatever it says. But erotic humiliation will say that I can feel this shame and still be desired, still get the sexual attention that I'm wanting in that moment. I look at sexual humiliation being rewiring kind of the nervous system. And speaking scientifically or biologically, your body in sexual humiliation kind of settings floods with dopamine, adrenaline, oxytocin, and these are the same chemicals that involve love, risk, and arousal. And so all those chemicals are making you feel alive and making you feel real. And I think for so many men, that becomes the first time they ever feel safe enough to just simply be without those expectations, without all those walls and that cookie cutter they're trying to fill. We live in a culture that teaches men to be strong, unshakable, to never show weakness, never cry, never need. So I think when a man finds himself aroused by being humiliated, being called names or exposed, made to feel small, it really collides head first with everything he's ever been taught about what it means to be a man. And that's where the shame lives. But, I want to say this very, very clearly. Your kink doesn't make you weak. It never makes you weak. Even though it's a kink where you're trying to feel weak, it doesn't make you weak as a person. I think that it makes you aware. And really, I see humiliation as a rebellion against toxic masculinity. And as a woman, maybe that's why I love sexual humiliation so much, because it is rebelling against that. But, humiliation is kind of like permission to fail, permission to stop pretending that perfection is strength. And that can be very liberating for some submissive men. Having that freedom from the performance of being enough. And I also think that humiliation is one of the most intimate kinks there is. And that sounds really funny, right? Because a lot of the times humiliation involves really harsh words, but it's such an intimate space because to be humiliated, you must first be known. And when I humiliate someone, like truly humiliate someone, especially like psychologically, really tapping into that erotic space, I'm not tearing them down. I'm showing them that I see every part of them, even the messy and hidden parts that they thought no one could love. And I still want them. I'm shining a light on those things. I'm bringing it to the table, and that's the only thing on the table. It makes me think of this file that I recently did with a customer that was doing a custom. It was his idea, so I can't really take credit, but I think it works so beautifully. It was a premature ejaculation hypnosis where I conditioned the listener to believe that becoming my pre-jack boy, becoming really good at prematurely popping makes me love them more. And that became such a powerful piece for them, I think. And I've heard other people that have heard the files say the same thing, that in the moment when they feel like they're going to come too soon, it pops into their mind, oh, but you know what? Mommy loves when I fail miserably. Mommy loves it, so I'm going to do it, And it's such a paradox, really, to feel degraded and adored at the same time. It's really a mind fuck in the best way, because to hear the words that should really sting and make you feel low, instead make your heart race and your body really ache. Because truly, I don't think it's the insults that arouse someone that's into this kink. I think it comes down to the connection and feeling like someone finally understands and is shining a light into that darkness and really doesn't flinch, when they see it. So I also strongly believe that humiliation, erotic humiliation, can become a place where there is so much healing. And that may sound really funny to you, but I really do believe that. I believe that erotic humiliation becomes healing because it's like alchemy, because you take something society taught you to fear. So say your inadequacies, your imperfections, and then you eroticize it. You reclaim it. That is alchemy. And then suddenly that dark corner that held so much shame, so much negative self-talk becomes this place of pleasure, becomes this powerful place of surrender. And if you're a fan of erotic humiliation, because I'm sure there's people listening that are probably just curious, but if you're a fan of erotic humiliation, I'm going to tell you right now, and this is where I get passionate, is you are courageous. You're looking at something that stings, something that I've heard some men say that, they've been teased about something, or that maybe like way in their past, they had a moment with an ex where the woman didn't really mean to degrade or humiliate them, but, it became that way. And, they're using that pain, that painful memory, and alchemizing it. And that takes some fucking balls. I'm going to tell you that right now. I think that you are courageous and that you're learning that you can survive a potential past, shame and still feel loved, still feel pleasure and own something. And that is transformation. So through sexual humiliation, you're reclaiming through vulnerability and really doing some, to me, some really powerful work. So we're going to take a moment to have a little reflection time, okay? Especially if you're listening and you're a fan of erotic humiliation, or something hit you in this episode where, oh, I think I might. So I'm going to give you some time to think about it. So take a breath, okay? And think about the part of yourself you've been afraid to let someone see. Maybe it's your softness. Maybe it's your desire to please. Maybe it's your craving to be told you're not perfect, and that's okay. Now, I want you to imagine someone looking at that part of you, and instead of shaming it, making fun of it, laughing at it, they actually smile. And then they also say that I see that part of you, and I see you, and I want to shine a light on this. I want to play with it. I want to discover it with you. I want to give it attention. That is the heart of erotic humiliation. Okay, it's not about someone being a cold hard bitch because for no reason really. It's giving yourself permission to be vulnerable and to change that, to take that weakness and turn it into something that feels good. So if you've ever felt ashamed of your kink, I want you to know this. Please let this even tap in, even just a little. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are beautifully complex. And because humiliation porn, because you find it hot, it doesn't make you less of a man. I think it makes you a man brave enough to face himself. Okay. Now, I want to thank you so much for listening, and I'm going to give you a suggestion. If this episode really stirred something inside of you, I encourage you to sit with it. Really sit with it. Journal about it. If you don't typically journal, open up your notes app on your phone and let words come out. Or just simply sit with it in your mind. Reflect. And if you want to go deeper, I definitely have audios that explore humiliation in a very safe and guided and sensual way. And I want to tell you that you deserve to be seen even in your shame. I would say especially there. And that's a wrap for this episode of The Slut Next Door, where we dive deep into the raw, unapologetic truths of human desire. If you loved what you heard today, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a juicy moment. Want to connect with me outside the podcast? Click the link in my bio, where you can find lots of juicy content and options. Until next time, I'm Beatrix Vale, your Slut Next Door, and I'll see you in the next episode.